The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. On Tuesday, April 6th, voters in the City of Oshkosh will be going to the polls. We'll be electing a number of positions, including school board, Oshkosh City Council, a couple of judgeships, and there will be some referenda questions on the ballot as well. Later in this half hour, we're going to be joined by Theresa Thiel, the incumbent running for the Oshkosh School Board. In this half hour, however, we're very pleased to be joined by Frank Tower. Frank is an incumbent on the Oshkosh Common Council. He is seeking re-election. This will be his second term that he is seeking. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me on the show.
We appreciate it. Why don't we start, as we do with all of our political candidates, by you explaining to folks a little bit about yourself and why you're seeking re-election.
Well, certainly. I had run for city council once and lost on a recount to Shirley Maddox.
By like one vote or something, wasn't it?
It was one vote I won by and then two votes I lost by.
Weird.
So it was touch and go there for a while. But both, and then obviously I ran again and was elected on my second time. Both of those opportunities really were me being out there, being of community service. There's not one particular issue or one particular thing that says, gee, I should run for city council. It was more a feeling of community duty, civic duty, that I had the ability to listen to everyone, I think make an educated decision on votes, and so that's why I decided to run.
Okay. So there's no particular issue why you're seeking re-election this time, just kind of just want to continue what you started?
Correct, and obviously there's a bit of a learning curve, as you know, to getting all the information, and now that I've got a bit of a feel for what the job entails and what we have to do, some of that experience, hopefully, if I'm re-elected, would be able to be used in the future.
Well, one of the most recent things that I think the council has done, Frank, that has really raised the ire of people in this community, and if you've been watching the show, you've probably heard us mention this, is Councilman Paul Esslinger, about a month ago, brought forward a letter that he wanted the entire council to sign. That letter was going to go to the state representatives in Madison, as well as State Senator Cheryl Ressler, basically just suggesting, inviting, proposing, whatever word you want to use to attach to that, that they come to some periodic council meetings and share with the council what's going on. Only two of the council members, Mr. Esslinger and Brian Peschel, signed that letter. And one of the reasons that you had stated that you didn't was because you wanted to have more one-on-one contact with these folks. Have you since made contact with Senator Ressler and Representatives Underheim and Owens?
Since then, no. I was in conversation with them and talked to Greg quite often at various junctures. Carol, not as much, and of Carol Ressler. Carol Owens, not at all, really, because she's not in the area with where I would interact with her. But I talked to Greg and with Carol on periodic basis, letting them know basically what my concerns are with the community, what people have emailed me, called me with, various things that they're concerned with in the community. My comment really at the council meeting was more, I like going to one of my elected representatives one-on-one. I really like that ability to talk directly to them as opposed to having them come to a council meeting. The council meeting, in my opinion, is really conducting the business of the city, and therefore having them come to the meeting, I don't really see that fit. I can understand that individuals are not necessarily happy with either elected representatives locally or state, so picking up that phone or sending an email, I find the phone the most effective. An email, being that I'm in the internet business, can be be kind of pushed to the side,
Sure.
disregarded, whereas picking
Sure.
up that phone and having that direct contact, or literally going to Madison. Anytime I'm in Madison on whatever business it is, I'll usually stop by the Capitol, stop in and see if Carol or Greg are around, just to at least say hi or give them any concerns or issues that I've seen lately.
But don't you think that, I mean, yes, the Oshkosh Common Council meetings, Frank, are conducting business of the city, but they are making decisions that affect how you guys on the council dais do business. I mean, I think it's good business that they come, and it doesn't have to be even every month. But you know, what would hurt for them to come every couple of months and just keep you guys and the citizenry apprised of what's going on? I mean, wouldn't it be more, I guess, expeditious for them to inform all of us at once, rather than every single person picking up a phone and calling them? They don't have time to talk to all citizens.
Well, when you say all of us at once, I mean, keep in mind that only about a third of the people in the Oshkosh community actually have Time Warner cable access. So obviously, you're not going to have, when you say everyone, the question is how far
Well,
does
sure,
it
but you've got
penetrate?
media there who can report on things as well.
Potentially, because they'll
So.
appear in the Northwestern and other things. So by one thought, sure, it could be more expedient to give this information out. But again, I really am an advocate of that, the individual person, because personally, when someone calls me, as opposed to coming to a council meeting or to a different, I really like that one-on-one interaction where there can be questions and answers and dialogue back and forth. For better or for worse, a council meeting, as you know, Melanie, doesn't really give you that ability a lot of times, and can cause some frustrations that I've seen from individuals saying, well, I've got one more comment or one more thing I'd like you to think about or consider. So that's why I prefer that one-to-one interaction, and I think it works best both ways.
Okay.
Don't you think, I think what happens with city council members, and maybe you more so than anybody, because I think you're probably the least confrontational person and probably the most quiet person on the city
absolutely,
council.
yeah.
And I want to get into that later.
Oh, certainly.
I think what I took away from those discussions when Paul had brought up this letter, and I was listening to all of you comment about how you wanted to do this kind of in your own way, and you didn't want it to be perceived as in a threatening fashion. I mean, those weren't your exact words, but that's kind of the impetus of,
Sure.
of what the meaning was, or certainly what I derive from it is, I think sometimes we as leaders are far too concerned about comfort levels of our state representatives. We don't want to put them on the spot, we don't want to embarrass them, we don't want to seem confrontational, and so thereby these quiet conversations on telephones or in a side room someplace where we can ask these difficult questions and they have the opportunity to answer in a way that they wouldn't do on TV. I just don't, I'm not comfortable with that.
But the concern I would have then with that is, would you get a different answer, you know, quote unquote,
it's on the
behind closed
record.
doors versus, but what do you get for that response if it's in a more public forum? Is someone more guarded? I like to get the honest response, the
well, and I
honest
think
reaction.
that and I guess that's my point, is with elected officials, rather than measuring your words so carefully to make sure that you're politically correct or you come across as non-confrontational or whatever it is, the word of the week that we have to be. I think it's our responsibility as elected officials, both locally and state, to give those honest answers and not be afraid to tell the truth, as unpleasant as that may be, because ultimately down the road we're going to find out.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
that's why I don't think what Paul had suggested by bringing these individuals into the council chambers, I mean, there's legislation that is, I mean, when they talked about the tax freeze, there was no conversation with you guys. You city council members were not aware until it was way past a goodly amount of time to have open discussions with these folks that the tax freeze was even being proposed. Is that not true?
Correct.
So, how do you have a telephone conversation with your state legislators about something that's going to affect our city, like potentially the property tax freeze, when you don't even know it's coming?
Well,
and then it's too late.
True, but given the fact that once it knew it was coming, then we can get on the phones and say, why are you doing this? What are you trying to do? There must be some rationale behind this possibility? Do you think that it is we are spending too much, which I don't think anyone could argue in Oshkosh we're running around there spending money like drunken sailors,
Right.
but I still think that the average folk here in Oshkosh don't completely understand all of the things we spend money on, so therefore it's important that we do education. But getting back to your point, I still think that phone call or that letter is going to be the ultimate way that's going to make someone decide one way or the other how they're going to go ahead and vote.
And I think one of the other things I guess I want to get across is that during these budget situations that we just went through this last budget, and that you will go through again in the next budget, because
assuming I'm elected.
well, whomever, a bonding company just lowered the state's bond rate from a AA+ to a AA, which for people who aren't aware of how that affects them, in order to borrow money, in order to do the business of the states and the cities, it's now going to cost us more money because the bond rate went down. So it costs us more to borrow money. Same amount of money, but now it costs us more. And the bonding company said that they were concerned with that. The reason that they did that is because they see another billions of dollars of deficits in the next biennium, the shortfalls that the state has not addressed in the last biennium budget. So, and yet we still can't get state representatives to sit in a council chamber and see what happens with our local budgets, and they still propose property tax freezes. My question to you, Frank, is knowing now that a bonding company has again lowered the bond rating for the entire state, which will obviously affect all of us, will that have an effect on decisions that you will make in the future about borrowing money and how you plan, how you foresee money being spent for the city?
Possibly. The one thing, and I'm sure Mark Harris, you've seen on council meetings numerous times, has been very concerned with whether it's the general fund revenue, whatever it happens to be, making sure that we stay solidly in a place where our bond rating stays very good as a city. So I think that's something, no matter what decision we make, it's always a question of, if we're going to go ahead and borrow money, how is it going to affect the possibility? The problem is with bond raters, you can never ask them the question ahead of time. Well, if I do this and this, what is going to happen? And of course, you don't really receive a definite response. It's always a bit nebulous. It's a, well, try it and we'll see what happens. So that's always a challenge.
Would you support, as you did this last budget, taking money again out of the general fund to supplant your deficits on the city budget?
As long as it's something that's a one-time expense. The real challenge that you get into doing that is if you borrow it now, when it comes to budget time next year, you're going to need it again unless you've cut something else or you have some additional revenue. So I get very concerned when we take money out of there if it's going to be something on a continual basis.
Because you can, it's kind of like the state did with this tobacco money. You know, the general fund is not to be looked at as a slush fund for shortfalls for bad planning.
It's not a rainy day fund.
Well, it's a rainy day fund, but it's for the operation of the city in case of an emergency situation.
A catastrophe.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's where we as a city have been smart, and the state doesn't have a rainy day fund, and depleting those funds can potentially put you in harm's way. So, you know, I'm very concerned about depleting those general funds. It took a long time. There was a philosophy of city councils previous to you and even to myself to not have a general fund equity program, because the philosophy was that the taxpayers should have it in their pockets. The problem is that our bond ratings were so low because we didn't have the rainy day fund that it actually cost us more to operate on a day-to-day basis. With the budget being a looming and ever-looming cloud, and you hate to, you know, you hate to sound like a naysayer, but you really need to prepare people because the city has run so frugally for so incredibly long that when you do have these looming deficits and you're not sure where the revenue stream is going to come from the state, and you don't always find that out until very, very late in the budget process. Dick Woolink is about ready to pull what's left of his hair out. There are several items in the budget that always seem to be a bone of contention. Downtown redevelopment, even though it is capital improvements, it's still part of the budget process. The Grand Opera House funding. where do you stand on those things? I mean, how far are you willing to go despite budgetary concerns last year and now again this next coming budget? How far are you willing to go with continuing
I think we
support
need
those?
to continue with downtown redevelopment. The question is how much? And I think that any council member you talk to would have the same vision. We need to continue on a path, but temper it with where we currently are economically. We don't want to lose sight, and it may take us 25 years to get everything done down there, but as long as we continue with it, I think that's a good thing for the community. Obviously, we don't want to do it at the expense of the rest of the community. There needs to be a balanced approach to everything from the north side to the south, east, and west, but I still think that we need to continue. It's a question of how much, and I think that will, every budgeting cycle, be different. We may have to give up one item in order to have a better budget that we would not do downtown. I would love to have seen all of the streetscaping done this year. It's not going to happen this year. It's probably not going to happen next year. It's going to be a question of judicious use of dollars. As far as the grant, I'm comfortable with the level of support we currently provide to them. I don't foresee supporting personally any additional dollars going to the organization at this point in time.
One of the questions that I have about the Grand Opera House, and you know, you and I probably philosophically disagree on the funding of the Grand Opera House.
So.
I suspect that was probably a gimme, but I thought I would say it just for sake of argument. One of the things in the 80s is when the Grand Opera House was basically rededicated. It came back. It was cleaned up. It was dedicated back to the citizens of the city of Oshkosh. That was 20 years ago. For all intents and purposes, they still don't have an ACORN fund. And for people who are wondering what that means, is there is no fundraising dollars set aside to help facilitate the needs of the Grand Opera House. And in the 80s, when this whole restoration movement was being talked about and brought forward, it was promised at that time that this building, this whole idea, would not become a burden or be on the tax rolls or on the backs of the taxpayers. For 20 years, that has not been the case. Because you are supportive of this and you're supportive of the arts, and I appreciate that, what do you say to the foundation and the people on the board? It's been 20 years. I understand you support the grant, but when you're having these private conversations that you like to have via the telephone or email or whatever you're doing, what are you telling them? I mean, these are really difficult decisions that you have to make at budget time, and there's a lot of outcry from people that enough is enough and you got to start cutting, and unfortunately arts are viewed as fluff. I mean, by some people it's viewed fluff.
And it's unfortunate because it's not just the arts, but it's culture and the community. But getting back to specifically the question, the Opera House building is owned by the city. So it's my feeling that there's a certain level of responsibility that we have. Just like the museum is an example. Obviously we fund that completely. So that's one of the reasons why I'm comfortable with the level of support. As to why they have not accrued enough money to go ahead and help some of the ongoing expenses and maintenance, I think that's something that no matter whether I talk to the board privately or in a public forum, I think they need to understand that the economics of today are different than they were in the 80s or even the 90s. We're seeing arts funding cut at the state level, at the national level, so there is a need for a look to alternate revenue sources, different programming. I know right now obviously the Grand is searching for a new executive director, and the previous director was there for really a very short time.
Not even a year, was he?
No, I don't believe so. So it really comes down to, I think the Grand Board realizes that it's a different environment and it's time to step up to the plate, and I hope they do. I hope a new executive director is put in place that understands where we are today in Oshkosh and nationally, and realize that they need to go ahead and make a facility that can run itself.
Would you support a movement for the Grand Opera House to be rented out as it used to be years ago, where it's operated actually like a business, where basically the building is there, we rent it out, it's used for whatever purposes, or to go to request for proposals for someone else to come in and run this, or to potentially buy the building?
Well, I know the facility is rented out right now because couple of the different arts groups I'm involved with, we do rent it out. We use it for various shows. I don't think that in and of itself would be enough to sustain the facility. I think there needs to be some type of organized group of people in there, whether they be the current group, whatever it might be, to provide programming for the facility in addition to allowing it to be used for various organizations, whether they be arts groups or other groups, to rent and use.
Thank you, Frank.
Sure.
You know, going back to downtown redevelopment, Frank, one of the things that I think is real problematic with downtown is you've got businesses closing left and right. Nobody half the time seems to know that they're going out of business. They're just all of a sudden gone. What is OCDC doing to, to keep you guys apprised of what they're doing to keep business active, bring in new business downtown? I mean, that too is part of downtown redevelopment. It may not be, redoing facades on buildings or streetscaping, but it's helping to keep a downtown looking and feeling alive. It makes people want to go downtown. You've got stores down there that have disappeared. You've got other stores that some are only open on the weekends. You've got trash piled up behind buildings along Main Street, like behind Carmel Crisp, I think, is where there's a bunch of trash piled up. I mean, it really, parts of it really look like crap, quite honestly. And, somebody, first of all, from the city, I guess, needs to go in and start cleaning some of this stuff up. But what is OCDC specifically doing to keep you guys apprised of new businesses that are coming in, what their efforts are, things like that?
To what I have seen, other than the occasional report, there isn't any specific thing that they present to the council. I know Paul has called for getting some type of reports from the OCDC organization, as well as CHAMCO on a more regular basis. We do get some information, obviously, when a new large organization comes in the town or something happening with the industrial park. But as far as OCDC goes, they're really charged with trying to retain and try to attract new businesses. So it's my impression they're out more grabbing individuals or organizations to try and bring them into Oshkosh, so that they're out in different areas of the state or the country trying to bring people down to the Oshkosh area.
Because we just lost another downtown business. Granted, it's a little bit north, but Expert Tire, which was down in, I want to say maybe the 400 block of North Main or something like that. They were there a week and a half ago. This week, they're gone. And nobody seems to know any of these things are closing. I guess, and I realize that OCDC doesn't work for the city, and now they're not getting any funding from the city, but maybe what the city needs to do then, if OCDC is not doing its job, maybe the city needs to move forward and try and get someone hired to specifically do the job, because it's not getting done the way OCDC is doing it.
Well, in a more, I think, comprehensive, all-embracing approach might be a possibility. How you would fund that or who would do that is obviously the million-dollar question. But to market the city, if you will, and not just the downtown, obviously that's one of the great things about Oshkosh, but market all of Oshkosh. The concern you have then is who's going to do that? Are they going to do an effective job? And of course, how is that paid for?
Well, now that you've mentioned that, gee, I'm glad to hear that. Has that been discussed? Because I know when I was on the council, one of the things that I was very strongly supportive of is to have a House of Economic Development, for lack of a better terminology, under the mise of the City of Oshkosh, where the employees would be our employees. They would take direction from our city manager, our city council, our planning department. I mean, we have all the resources right there. We should be the people deciding what direction the city goes, where the money's being spent, how it best benefits our taxpayers. Why not do something like that? I understand the concerns that as soon as you start bringing more people in, you now have more people on your table of organization, you have more benefits that you pay. But if the ultimate goal is to market the city and to be prosperous and successful in doing that, I haven't heard anybody talking about that. At budget time, at community development block grant discussions, nothing. Are you going to regenerate that conversation, rejuvenate the idea, throw it out there? see what sticks, so to speak?
Well, as you comment, yeah, no, I've heard nothing myself on anything as far as a comprehensive type of thing, how you would market the city. But I think it's a really complex and challenging thing. How do you get one person or a group of people? The thing I would hate to do is add additional staff. As you comment, the question is, could that additional staff or staff members go ahead and generate enough new economy here in Oshkosh that they could justify their positions? And I think it's a hard leap to go from one to the other. Whether I would champion that or not, absolutely. I would be more than happy to see what could be done to go ahead and really market the city of Oshkosh. I've been in other communities, and you see that they have a comprehensive, complete way to go ahead and bring people into the community, whether you hit it from one side of town coming in or you fly into the airport, whatever it might be, you're immediately inundated with marketing and other materials for the city. And I think that would be something, if we could find a way to do that. Obviously Oshkosh to a certain extent is quite conservative, so it's a little difficult at times to overcome that, but
well,
I hope we can.
With just a few minutes left, you're finishing up your first term on the council, you're seeking re-election. With 3 seats available and only 4 people running, I guess by virtue of the numbers, there's a better than 50% chance you're going to get reelected. With people in the city pretty unhappy with the current complexion of the council, what would you say to them as to why they should reelect you?
Well, because I listen to everyone. No matter who you are, where you are in the city, business owner, homeowner, renter, whatever it might be, I'm available by electronic mail, telephone, letter. Stop me on the street, I'll talk for hours. So I think that allowing myself to be available to listen to what's going on in the community as much as possible is one of the strongest things I do, listening and seeing what's going on to try and make the best possible decisions.
Sure. What do you feel are some of the greatest accomplishments that you have brought forth or taken part in the last 2 years?
Well, definitely continuing with a comprehensive plan. That's something that is a map for the city for the next decade. The other things that I've been involved with, obviously the redevelopment in Riverside Park that finally came to conclusion with us acquiring the WPS property. I know neither of you necessarily like that.
Too bad we don't have time to get into that.
But with the amphitheater, so I think that's going to be an outstanding thing to have in Oshkosh. From what I've seen, it's going to be able to potentially draw large amounts of people and businesses down into the downtown area to really give it some go down there. So I'm quite excited about that. And just being out there in the community, seeing us try to put together reasonable budgets that we can go ahead and keep the taxes here as low as possible. I would have loved to have had decreased them this year, but unfortunately we weren't able to do that.
Do you have something that Frank can answer in like 30 seconds or so?
No.
Oh. Well, that's...
I'm not going to lie to you. I could pretend and bait him, and then he wouldn't be able to answer, so I'm not going to do that.
Well, that's
I appreciate that.
That's just fine. Very briefly then, Frank, what would you say to the people who are displeased with the job that the council is doing?
Let us know. If you're displeased with what we're doing, like I said, shoot an email, give us a call, come to the council meetings. I think the more people that are at council meetings letting us know what's going on, the more responsive we can be as a council.
Okay. All right, we are down to 1 minute. Why don't you take about 30 seconds or so and just look into camera 3 and tell folks why they should vote for you on Tuesday, April 6th.
My name is Frank Tower, and I'm running for re-election for Oshkosh Common Council. I promise to continue to do the best job I can on council, listening to everyone's concerns and making the best possible decisions for the city of Oshkosh. I would appreciate your vote on April 6th, but no matter who you vote for, please get out and vote. Thank you.
Very well said, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We're going to take a real short break. We'll be back in 2 minutes, and when we do come back, we'll be joined by school board candidate, incumbent Theresa Thiel. We'll be right back.
Good evening. Follow me, please.
Imagine what America would be like today if Martin Luther King never had a dream. Help keep the dream alive. To find out more about the Martin Luther King Memorial in Washington, D.C., call or log on now.
Oshkosh Community Access TV2 is your local sports channel. Follow your favorite Oshkosh teams each week as CATV2 presents the high school game of the week. Besides football and basketball, we feature soccer, gymnastics, swimming, wrestling, and volleyball. Sundays at 8, Mondays at noon, and Wednesdays at 8, CATV2 is the place to be for high school sports. The High School Game of the Week, here on Oshkosh Community Access TV2.
I want to
Have an impact.
make a difference. I want my voice to be heard.
Take matters into your own hands. Smack down your vote for the candidates who represent you and the issues you care about. Make time on Election Day to vote in elections in your community.
Have an impact.
Make a difference.
Let your voice be heard.
To learn more about the candidates where you live, contact the League in your state or community through lwv.org.
Smack down your vote on Election Day.
The Friends of OCAT is a nonprofit group that supports Oshkosh Community Access television programming and facilities. The Friends sponsor membership, underwriting, and fundraising projects. Their mission is to provide quality programming, to plan and implement fundraising activities, to develop a supportive membership, and to raise awareness of OCAT. If you would like to become a member and support Oshkosh Community Access Television, buy an OCAT card and enjoy discounts at many local businesses. Thanks for viewing OCAT.
Welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. We just finished talking with candidate for City Council, incumbent Frank Tower, and now we're joined by incumbent from the Oshkosh School Board, Theresa Thiel. Welcome back again.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on making it through the primary in February.
Thank you.
For people, I mean, obviously you were here just before the primary, but for folks who may have missed that show or newcomers to the city, what have you, and Melanie wasn't here either. She was sick or she was out of town.
Coughing up a lung.
I don't remember
sure which one it
the deal was when you were here the first time, but why don't you tell folks a little about yourself and why you're seeking re-election?
Okay. I'm finishing my first term on the school board. I started following the school board in the fall of 1997 when my oldest daughter started kindergarten, and I attended nearly every school board meeting. Since I've been on the board, I've only missed one special meeting out of 80 regular and special meetings we've had. I also chair the Policy and Governance Committee and have served on that committee since I was elected to the board. I also worked on the Jefferson referendum, and I've been pretty connected to the school district. I am, as most people know, married to a teacher in the district. I have two children, two daughters, one at Jefferson and one at South Park. And I spend approximately 25 hours per week volunteering at Jefferson Elementary School, mainly doing tutoring to children that need extra help in the classroom. So I see, almost every day what goes on in our schools. And I want to run for re-election because I think at this crucial time with the NCLB regulations and the talk that the state has right now with the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, the property tax freeze, all those things, I think the experience is really going to be essential. And our board now, with Mr. McHugh retiring, will only have one board member that has had more than one, that has actually completed at least one term on the board.
I thought about that. That is kind of scary.
Yeah, that is. At a recent candidates forum at Oaklawn School, you had referred to yourself as the tax and spend candidate. That seems like kind of an odd way of describing oneself.
What I said was, I know people say I'm the tax and spend candidate. However, I believe we have a number of unmet needs in our district that need to be funded. I see it every day. I see children who have serious needs, especially needs for, say, social workers. We don't have enough in the district to meet those needs. And we had a social worker at my children's school. We no longer have one. Those needs did not disappear. That's one of the things. People say that. I don't believe that to be the case. If you look at the evidence, we have the 10th largest school district in the state. We're 19th out of 20th in per pupil spending. We're one of the 98 lowest spending districts in the state of 426 school districts. That puts us in the bottom quarter in spending. So how that's tax and spending foolishly, I don't think that the data supports that. But that's what people say. Some people say.
Okay.
I didn't.
What does that mean when you say that we're 98th?
No, I said we're one of the 98 lowest spending districts in the state.
All right. I'm glad we clarified that. Yeah. Is that a bad thing?
I'm just saying that it would lend me to believe that that is evidence that we are not foolishly spending. And also, if you look at, we're 19th out of 20th in per pupil spending overall, but when you look at dollars spent on instruction, we move up to 13th. So again, that's evidence to me that most of our money is spent where it should be, on instruction of children.
Okay. You talked about unmet needs in the school, and you talked specifically, specifically about social workers. I got to tell you, Theresa, when I went to school, we didn't have social workers in school.
And you know, when I went to school, we didn't either. And I can tell you, what I see today is nothing like the experiences that I had when I was in school. The problems are huge. The issues, I mean, we have children, one classroom, perhaps 6 parents in jail. That didn't happen when I was in school. The issues are huge. I see it every day. I see children who, you know, my children went to school ready to read. They had been read to every night. We have children who come to school and that they have not had those experiences. Should those things be handled in the home? Of course, but they're not. And the fact is that in the end, society's going to pay for the things that don't happen. You look at the demographics, we are going to need everybody who graduates from high school being a productive member of society. If you look at how many fewer workers we're going to have in 2020 than we had 30 years ago.
I hope the employers are listening when you say that, because they're not treating people very good right now, so I hope that they're happy, because it's going to turn around on you, so be good. I guess what I'm wondering is how, if you look at the issues that the schools are facing and the students are facing in their family lives, which I agree with you, they've changed dramatically just from when I was in school to when my daughter went to school. School's a scary place. I walked into West High School, the hair color, the clothing, the piercings, and my daughter was one of them, so I can't say too much, but because it is kind of a frightening place, and evidently I came from a Neanderthal era, I'm not sure, because boy, we would have never gotten away with that stuff. We just would not have gotten away with that. There was a certain level of respect and a way to conduct yourself and the way that you dressed, and you know, none of us really knew we were poor because nobody had anything. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't all this, I'm carrying a Prada purse, and you know, right. I didn't even know what the Prada was. I honest to God didn't. But okay, so to eliminate some of those issues in the school, would you support uniforms, greater structure, greater discipline, greater parental controls? I mean, what can we do to bring that back around so that there is that respect and control and an environment where children are learning and not necessarily competing because they have the wrong jeans on or the wrong shoes or the wrong purse or God knows the wrong hair color, because that's a problem too.
I'm not sure something like uniforms is going to fix all of that. I mean, I haven't really studied that issue. I don't know what it would do or wouldn't do. But the issue is way deeper than that. We have to find a way to, and I'm working on, part of it is required by the law, but we're working on a parental involvement policy that really tries to have parents become our partners, because that's where it all really matters. If parents aren't supporting what is happening in the schools, things don't go well. I mean, I have seen a real shift even since my daughter, who's in 6th grade, had started kindergarten. Some parents were pretty apathetic. Now they don't support the rules that you have at school. And I think there needs to be a way to explain how this is good for your child too. That society needs this, schools need this. We need to work in partnership to accomplish the same goals and not to be at odds at all times. And it's a difficult thing to do.
You said parents don't support the rules, Theresa. What, like, give us an example of like something that they don't support.
Just something simple. You know, we have what's called a rule review, where if you break a rule review, okay. You know, at an elementary school, okay. And this is just one my children go to. But you know, you'll send, the teacher will write up, you know, child throwing snowballs at school. It's against the rules. And the response may come back, well, I'm not telling them not to do that. I did that as a kid and it's fun. Well, how do you then explain to a 7-year-old, well, you still have to follow the rules even though, I mean, I hear it when I'll say something to a child, well, my mom says, or I don't have to listen to you because. That makes it very difficult, and I think you need to find a way to explain to parents that this is not in your child's best interest either. That in the end, this is not going to pay off. That we have to work together to say, these are the important things, this is what's going to make your child learn better, and this is why.
Go ahead.
We just have to be, I mean, for a lot of people, especially in a place where the school, like where my children go, it is a scary place for parents because they didn't have good experiences all the time, so they don't want to come in. And I think it's incumbent upon us as a district to find ways to make that a better experience so that people will come in and will want to work with us as partners to move things forward. Because a lot of the issues that you talk about have to do with the fact that at home children don't necessarily always have the rules. And if you look at the children that are successful, most of them do have the things that you would expect, and most of them have similar experiences to what I experienced, but that's not the case with all of our children.
Well, as a parent who raised a teenager, and we had a mom and a dad and a dog and the cat, and your pretty typical picket fence kind of thing. I know people think of picket fence, Melanie Bloechl, probably not. But pretty standard upbringing. And my daughter was a pistol. I mean, she was a pistol. And it was not for lack of trying. It was not for lack of discipline, because I'm about as big of a hard ass as you get. And still had problems. So one of my concerns is that we're putting social workers in schools. And I understand that there are kids, in some cases, that probably do need that attention. And I understand that the issues are probably far deeper than we can go into in 27 minutes. And I don't want to minimize that, but would it not be advantageous to put things into place like uniforms and greater structure and less no open campuses, and create an environment where this is an educational environment. This isn't fooling around time. I think what happens a lot of times is, I remember my daughter coming home from school and saying, my teacher believes that we should all be able to vent and we should all be able to have our say, and we should, that wasn't the way it was at our house. You have respect, I want to hear your opinion, but there were limits. And I think sometimes when I would go to school, and this wasn't with all teachers, but I definitely got this impression that somehow the teachers thought that I was bothering them, that they didn't really have time, and that they knew better what was in the best interest of my daughter than I did. And that's where I thought a lot of the adversarial kinds of things came up with me. And things were taken care of in schools that I wasn't aware of. I wouldn't get phone calls that said, hey, Mrs. Bloechl, we need you down to this school. We're having a problem with your daughter. It would be taken care of, and I wouldn't find out about it for several days. No. This
Sometimes
is my
weeks.
daughter. This is my daughter. I have an investment here, and maybe all parents aren't like that, but those were the experiences that I had. So I guess what I'm saying is maybe the uniforms and some of these other things, like, okay, you're not having blue hair to express yourself today, because sorry, that's just not what we do in a school system. You want to express yourself, put the temporary hair color in on the weekend and let your mom and dad look at it. That's great. But this is a school environment, and we need structure, and that goes for the teachers too, because I'll tell you, when I've walked into some of these schools, I can't distinguish between students and teachers. Is that not a problem?
That is not what I have experienced. I mean, I have visited all of our schools. I haven't seen those things. I haven't been, I don't spend the significant amount of time at other schools that I do at Jefferson, but, that's not what I've experienced, where teachers are saying, well, we're not going to let parents know. I mean, I know they call and say this occurred and I'm concerned about this, and, I'm concerned that the book never comes out of the backpack that I would like you to spend 15 minutes reading each night. Those kinds of things are the concerns that I see and that I hear. Again, I mean, I think uniforms, it's pretty simplistic, and I don't think it gets to the heart of the issue. The heart of the issue is we need to be focusing on doing whatever we can to create a learning environment where kids can learn, where kids can be involved in their learning. I mean, that's the whole shift now, is that it's hands-on type learning where kids are doing rather than just soaking up information and having it fed to them. That's a whole shift that needs to be done as well. And it's a huge shift, and it's a huge change, and it's a huge way of doing things. But I think those things are going to have a greater impact than putting on uniforms or, having things like that.
Superintendent Ron Heilman has developed a 20-year vision plan for the district, and among other things, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the plan is proposing closing 4 smaller elementary schools and then building 2 larger type elementary schools. Is that in fact correct, and if so, which schools are being targeted for possible closure?
It's not exactly happening that way. I mean, it's when we need to replace schools, don't replace the same schools in the same place with the same number of seats. So it's not, okay, let's close these schools and tomorrow we're going to build. But as the schools, and that's part of what's happening now is the district is having that report done of where are we at with each of our buildings, the systems in them and what is their life expectancy, et cetera. And that when it comes time, and yes, I think that makes sense. I don't think it's efficient at all to replace a school of 125 or 30 students with another school of 125 or 30 students. You can't efficiently staff something like that, and staffing is our biggest cost. So I don't think it would ever make sense to replace a building that has less than 250 or 300 students with a building of less than 250 or 300 students. I just don't think that's economically, it just doesn't make sense. It's not efficient.
So then you don't support, quote unquote, the traditional neighborhood schools in this plan?
Well, again, the only definition I've ever heard of a neighborhood school that seems to work in all the time I spent on those boundary committees is the school my child's always gone to. So if that's the definition you're using, I mean, can I truly argue that Jefferson is the only school in my neighborhood when Smith is 6 blocks away and Jefferson's 2? I would argue they're both in my neighborhood. I mean, I live within 2 miles of about 6 elementary schools. So if it means that my child will always go to the school they've always gone to, no, I don't support that definition. If it means making kids walk 3 miles to school, I don't support that either. That's unreasonable. But to try to have schools that you can efficiently staff that have more than 1 grade level, because once you don't have that, it's very difficult to get, you end up with 15 kids in 1st grade. What are you going to do? Say we're not having 1st grade this year? And if you've got 25 in 2nd grade and 25 in kindergarten, what really are you going to do? The more children you have, the more efficient you can be.
A while back, the district had purchased some property on Riff Road, presumably in the event that we'd need it someday. But apparently the land, I mean, we're not using it. There are not enough numbers to support building a school there. What's happening with that land right now?
I haven't heard any talk of anything. I mean, that issue
is
hasn't
it being
been
used
brought
for
up.
anything? Is anyone using it?
To my knowledge, no. It's just there.
Because someone had mentioned to us just in the last couple of days that there's a farmer that is farming on the land. Do you know anything about that? And not paying rent?
I don't. I can look into it, but no, I don't.
Yeah, because that wouldn't be too fair, I don't think.
No,
I
I don't think. Especially since
I
do believe we own it.
Yeah. Well, we all have a piece of the rye, so to speak.
Right.
$10,000 an acre.
Yeah, I have not heard that at all. But
I'm looking for a good place to plant some tomatoes. So if there's a little,
I'll let you know if you're allowed.
One of the other things, Theresa, is in speaking about this property, this 40 acres that Cheryl had brought up, there was supposed to be that big developmental boon, and thereby having all of these students. Okay. It's not in the right location. The boon never occurred. The development never occurred. With Ron Heilman's 20-year vision plan, would you presume that you're selling of this property, probably having to look for other property if you're phasing out certain smaller schools, building potentially 2 jumbo elementary schools?
Well, I don't think they'd be jumbo. I mean, we're not talking 1,000 students or anything. I think we're talking in the 400 range, which is even smaller than Traeger Oakwood. I don't know specifically that it's proposed, but the talk all seems to be that school to combine Sunset and Oak Lawn, when the time comes, would be located somewhere other than that property, though there is talk that someday that development may take off and you still would need a school out there, that wherever, if we built something closer to town and that whole development took off, it wouldn't be real effective to bus children all that way either.
Yeah, correct. One of the things that I have to tell you has just chapped my backside so badly is this new calendar. Oh, good Lord, who thought this up? I mean, you guys would have had to been half intoxicated to come up with this program. I mean, the new calendar is so confusing. When I've asked people to explain it to me, I actually get a cerebral ache. I mean, some of the more, sometimes...
I did suggest they have a calendar for elementary, a calendar for middle, and a calendar for high school, but they use the little zigglies or whatever.
Can you try to explain this calendar as succinctly and simply as possible?
If I had it would be easier. But yes, there is a late start twice a month at the high schools. I believe it's on Mondays. 2 Mondays a month, there'll be a late start at the high schools. The students, I believe, start 49 minutes late, and the teachers start 30 minutes early, which gives them 79 minutes of total collaboration time.
Okay, starting to hurt here.
Okay, and one Friday a month, elementary and middle school students leave 90 minutes early.
Elementary and
middle school students leave 90 minutes early.
If you happen to have a high school student and an elementary student in the Oshkosh public school system, Mom is going to be tearing her hair out trying to figure out what days the little ones get off to school early or late.
The little ones always go to school at the regular time.
Well, elementary school. What?
Elementary and middle always go to school at the regular time. They just get out one Friday a month early.
Oh, okay.
Just early out for elementary and middle, late start for high school.
Now, when they get out early like that, because obviously childcare is an issue, which is limited, is there going to be any kind of accommodations for after-school programming that's extended for I mean, because...
Well, the YMCA, which currently provides after-school care in a number of our schools, has said they have no problem providing it earlier, 90 minutes earlier, that one day a month. The Boys and Girls Club is willing to do that. They just need to find out, because primarily they're, the people that work for them are college students. They need to find out if they're going to have enough college students on Friday afternoons to staff it. But primarily, people who already have daycare issues, it's just going to be 90 minutes earlier. I mean, it's not the whole day off, which we had done in the past. So I would imagine in most cases, wherever your child goes, they'll go there 90 minutes earlier. The Boys and Girls Club in the school is the one where they're not sure if they're going to be able to staff
or if they can actually expand the program to accept more kids.
There's that as well.
Okay. So I understand that the whole purpose of this calendar was to create collaboration time for the teachers. Was there no way that this could have been done more simply, or because this seems a little crazy? I mean, you guys are like right on that cusp of just barely making the face-to-face time with these students as it is. And if the whole impetus is to have face-to-face time, get these kids educated, help them absorb the information, participate, I'm having a difficult time figuring out how you're doing that, playing games with a calendar like this.
Well, we needed to find a way, especially with, as I talked about, moving to this constructivist way, to looking at data. I mean, we had the big data retreat in the summer, to look at that data and say, how are we going to change what we do to improve student learning? That time needs to be found somewhere. We tried this year to, just have full days off. That wasn't as effective because it wasn't as continuous. It's this month and then 2 months later. And this way it's going to be, the elementary teachers are also coming in early, et cetera. The kids are only affected one day a month. So we've built that time in a number of ways so that teachers can figure out how to change what they do by meeting with other teachers in other schools, because again, if you're at a school where there's only one first grade, you don't have a lot of collaboration time with other first grade teachers in your school, so they'll have some time to do that, as well as to meet with other schools around the district.
Are there going to be tangible measures, something quantifiable that says, okay, we went to all this trouble with this calendar and we gave all this time, now
yes.
Quantify.
And that's being worked out by the Standards and Assessment Department and the Curriculum Support Specialists. They are looking at, these are the things we expect to have, the outcomes we expect to achieve after having done this collaboration, and here's what we've achieved and here's what we haven't. I mean, it's not going to happen in 6 months. It's probably not going to happen in a year, but over a 2, 3, 4 year time period, this is what we we're going to accomplish, and yes, we have accomplished it, or no, this isn't
So
working.
this calendar situation is not going to be singularly a one-year calendar?
Well, I mean, they are going to assess, did this work at all, but you're not
Okay.
going to have hard data that you can take forever and say, yeah, this worked. I mean, you can't do that in a year. But they're going to look at it at the end of each year and say, did this delivery system work? Is this more problems than it's worth? Do we need to look at something different? I mean, just like we did from last year to or from this year to next year, we've changed things as well.
If it would appear then that it didn't work and things have to be changed again, at what cost would that come to the taxpayer? Any idea at all?
I don't know that it would come at a cost. It's, you know, however many days we have, and I mean, we saved a little bit of money in busing by not having school on full days, but I don't know that going to,
Well, I
guess
think
the
probably
cost would be
union
busing if you have a few more days.
Well, I think
and-
it's also union negotiation because
exactly.
if you go from a calendar where face-to-face time has been cut back for collaboration time, and then all of a sudden you want those face-to-face hours back, let's face it, MEAD-ARB and teachers' negotiations will be, well, you're going to buy those days back.
But you could also put the face-to-face time in and have fewer staff development days. I mean, teachers have to work 191 days, I believe, versus, you know, so that you could still have the same number of total days they work. It's just more in front of kids than not. I mean, that's another way to
So
look
why
at
didn't
it or
they
do
do
it.
that instead of doing this whole calendar thing? Why didn't you do it that way to begin with?
I wasn't involved in the negotiation of the calendar, so I mean, this
Oh,
is
that's
what
right.
the people
You
involved said.
See, this is a problem. Okay, real quick, because we want to give you time to talk about a few things that maybe are pressing for you. Do you support the 4-year-old kindergarten program?
I think it's something we need to look at again. Children, we have more and more. We expect more and more from children as they move through, and I think that there are some serious issues of children not being prepared and not being ready. At the time, we don't have the space to do it, but I think it's something that's going to be coming down the road, just like all-day kindergarten did and a lot of other things. And I think it's something that we are going to have to look at to meet the needs of the expectations in the end.
But isn't it really just, I mean, kindergarten, even for 5-year-olds, is not required by the state. So is this not becoming more and more of a free daycare for parents?
Well, you know, on the one hand, all-day kindergarten was free daycare. On the other hand, we have a calendar that doesn't provide daycare. So, you know, I don't think we can win with the whole daycare issue. But, I mean, I look at all-day kindergarten, at my children's school anyway, it was not free daycare. It was meeting needs that were not being met. It was bringing children so that more children are on a level playing field as they move through the grades. Because there's a lot of children that don't have experiences of the kinds of things you need to be ready for school, and we are expecting way more of them. When I was in kindergarten, you need to know your colors and shapes, and that was it. You did not need to be ready to read by the end of kindergarten. That's what the expectations are, good or bad. That's what they are.
Right. Do you guys do remember 4 about yay
Yeah.
high?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, 4 years old is a tiny, tiny little thing. I just think, short of taking them out of a womb, I just don't know what else you guys are going to do.
We have got about 45 seconds left. Why don't you just tell folks why they should vote for you on April 6th?
Well, as I said in the beginning, I do have experience. We have a board that's not going to have a whole lot of experienced members. I think we have crucial issues. I've also spent time connecting with our state legislators. There's a lot of stuff going on in Madison that's really going to affect us and our finances, and I think that's important. And I've really shown the commitment to want to do that, and I've made it a point not to miss meetings. I've scheduled my life sometimes around these meetings, and I'm there to do what's best for the children.
All right. And remember to go to the polls on Tuesday, April 6th. Exercise your constitutional privilege to vote. It's not a right, but it is a privilege. And politics is not a spectator sport. Keep that in mind. Theresa, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it. Thanks to City Councilman Frank Tower for joining us in the first half hour. Thanks, as always, to you folks for joining us. And a reminder to check out our website, in particular the community section. That's where a lot of the meat of the website is. That's going to do it for this time. For Melanie Bloechl, I'm Cheryl Hentz. Until next time, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh. Take care.